only shake hands with people if their breath was sweet. Um, Another one was bloodletting, and basically what this was Galen's theory that there are four humors. Bloodletting was a common medical practice, and the idea was to allow people to of the access to humors to drain out the bodies, and it was a cure all of variety of conditions, including epilepsy. Now, bloodletting was the first port of call for physicians during the Black Plague, and this was. Hello, my name is Breezy, and I'll be honest with y'all. I had an episode recorded just for this very topic with my friend Bethany. You want to know the problem? I forgot to hit the microphone to record myself talking. I know, I'm an idiot. You can just say it. But anyway, welcome to Dark Academia for Insomniacs. Today, this was originally going to be a group recording, but apparently, I was going to have a guest on for y'all. That's okay. This is going to be a solo recording after all, I guess. But today we're going to be talking about the Black Death and some crazy cures for it and stuff that we had, and had a little guest appearance from Ginger. I also did find out that apparently during the plague, a lot of people did not like black cats. And I thank my friend Bethany for telling me, you just gave me something to score my future cat over when he starts to get needy. Um, but yeah. With that being said, if you're new here, hit that like button, ring that bell for notification. So please subscribe. Help a girl out. But today, we're just gonna keep it short, sweet, and simple. I'm already embarrassed enough about what happened. So please just bear with me, okay? Um, but what is the Black Death? Well, the Black Death was a devastating epidemic of the bubonic plague that struck Europe and Asia in the mid 1300s, and the plague would arrive in Europe in October 1347 when 12 ships from the Black Sea would dock at the Silicon port in Messina, and people would gather at the docks, um, still alive and were gravely ill and covered in black boils and oozed blood and pus. Now, Silicon 30s hastily ordered the fleet of death ships out of the harbor, but it was too late. And over the next 5 years, the Black Death would kill more than 20 million people in Europe, almost one third of the continent's population. So, how exactly did the Black Plague start? Would the Black Plague start? Well, even after the death ships pulled into the ports in Messina, many Europeans had heard rumors about a great pestilence, which was carving a deadly path across the trade and near the far. Now, indeed, in early 1340s, the disease had struck China, India, Persia, Syria, and Egypt. Whereas the plague is thought to have originated in Asia over 2,000 years, and it was likely spread by trading ships throughout recent research that was indicated the pathogen responsible for the Black Death that may have existed in Europe as early as 3000 BC. Now, Europeans were scarcely equipped for the horrible reality of the Black Death, and the men and women alike. The Italian poet Giovanni Boccaccio wrote, "At the beginning, my lady, there were certain swellings either on the groin or under armpits, and wax, and common apple, other than the size of an apple, and some more or less. Now blood and pus sped out of these strange swellings, and they would, in the swelling of the lymph nodes, untreated enough infection can spread throughout." Now, how did it spread exactly? Well, the Black Death was terrifyingly, increasingly contagious, and there were mere touching of the clothes. Basically, human to human contact, guys. Now, how about we? No, um, What were some strange remedies that were cured in the Black Death? I'll be honest with y'all, like some of these are just weird in general. But I guess we can go over it, huh? There was vinegar in the Black Death, which basically known as the Four Thieves vinegar. The Black Death cured from the medieval period mixed vinegar with garlic, herbs, and spices, and legends have it that four thieves who ransacked the homes of the dead victims protected themselves with this connotation whilst it looted while they would succumb to disease. And vinegar was even more of a preventative than a cure as the Black Death than the death at the time. For it's healthy to rub it on the bodies. Um, and there was some science behind this known as disinfectant since the ancient Greeks times, which added to the antimicrobial and insect repelling properties of herbs and spices. Next was curing the Black Death with onions, which I found this one very interesting. I don't think I could do onions if I am being frank with y'all. I don't know if I was desperate enough, and I would not survive. I would not have been in a blessed. I'll get to that in a second. But the humble onion was one of the home remedies that the desperate doctors and patients alike tried to use to cure the plague by rubbing chopped raw onions on your lymph nodes, and not only would the onion draw out the toxins, but it was thought that the onion fume could combat the miasma, and miasma was what many folk call poisonous toxic fumes. And the Europeans of the medieval period believed that breathing in miasma led to the plague. Now, while they may not have entirely been correct about the poison, they still understood that respiration played a part in the spread of the Black Death. And there were two types of the plague. There was the bubonic plague, which would cause lymph nodes, and the bubonic plague, which was spread by coughing and sneezing. Now, Pope Clement the Sixth supposedly advised people that to only shake hands with people if their breath was sweet. Um, Another one was bloodletting, and basically what this was Galen's theory that there are four humors. Bloodletting was a common medical practice, and the idea was to allow people to of the access to humors to drain out the bodies, and it was a cure all of variety and conditions, including epilepsy. Now, bloodletting was the first port of call for physicians during the Black Plague, and this was generally done using a blade or applying leeches. Now, the blood would be drained into a bowl directly from the patient's vein, usually one found out in the forearm. And sadly for victims of the Black Plague, bloodletting was certainly had no effect, and it could not destroy bacteria within. Although it achieved was um, to potentially spread more infection and disease in unsterilized equipment. And germ theory have been proposed by the Persian physician Ibn Sina as far back as 1025, but in the Middle Ages in Europe, the theory was rejected in favor of Galen's ideas. Now, another supposed cure was live chickens in the Vicari method. Now, my friend Bethany and I were cracking up at this one, guys. And basically, this is one of the most bizarre quacks cures for the Black Death, and this treatment was named the Vicari method after Thomas Vicari. The doctor who basically promulgated this was that it involved plucking chickens' feathers out of their butt and then tying the chicken to the human, and the chicken's rump was touching the patient's lymph nodes. Yeah, but the thought process behind this was strange and highly impractical, in the course of the treatment. Um, so therefore, the chicken could draw the infection out. If the patient died, then so be it. But if the poor chicken died first, then they would pluck another chicken and attach it. I know I shouldn't be laughing, but some of these cures are just hilarious. And once again, the bacteria from the chicken would have only made matters worse for the patient and hastened death. Some people even believe snakes could cure the plague. And the Chinese have been using snakes in their traditional medicine since 100 CE. And snake meat was eaten to aid circulation to remove toxins in the body of the patient. During the medieval period, physicians would treat the plague by cutting up a snake, placing it its parts on the pustules and sufferers. And in the case, it was believed that like attracts like, and the flesh of the evil snake would draw the evil sickness out of the victim. And snakes were also blamed for the Black Death, with religious leaders preaching that evil serpents have befouled the rivers with their persistence. Leeches were also believed to be a cure. Now, leeches were also used as a treatment for the Black Death in much of the same way, such as the flame was. They were used to draw bad blood from the patient. My mind just went to Taylor Swift. I'm sorry, guys. But the form of bloodletting was used to localize bloodletting, and the leech would be placed onto the body's lymph nodes to draw out toxins and therefore restore the balance of the four humors. Now, the species of the leech used medieval doctors, Herodo Metasaurus, which procured the leech collectors from the medieval period onward, and it was used to such an extent that it was declared extinct in the British Isles during on the 20th century. This next one's going to be gross, so just a heads up if you want to skip past this word, I understand. But feces and human excrement is perhaps the foulest in a long line of revolting plague treatments. They would mix your feces up with other substances into a paste consistently, smeared into your lymph nodes that have been cut open. Yeah, I know. And one such recipe called for the feces to be mixed with a ground lily root and tree sap, and it was applied to the open wound and it was tightly bound with cloth and did no doubt fester. Another one was flagellation. Let's not forget that religion pervaded every aspect of Europe during the medieval period. And it is therefore no surprise that they considered the Black Death to be a punishment from God for the sins of the commitment to earth. Now, groups of people known as flagellants would walk the streets, stripped to their waist, whipping themselves as a public penance to purge their bodies on the sins, and they had people that had brought the plague, and these whips often had several tails, um, and may as well walked within this what time they had left to enjoy. Now, there was also a powdered unicorn horn. You heard me right, a powdered unicorn horn. And basically, the medieval period is known for its mythological beasts, with the unicorn being perhaps the most intriguing. And according to medieval myths, the unicorn could only be subdued and captured by a virginal maiden. One cure of the Black Death was that it was very expensive and therefore only available to a very wealthy and it was powdered unicorn horn. And the powder, known as alicorn, was mixed with water and then given to the patient to drink, and it is thought that it was actually made from the tusk of the narwhal found in the seas of the northern Europe, or from a rhinoceros tusk that came to Europe from Africa. And another cure is medieval fire, actually. Yes, fire. And this was that physicians who attended Pope Clement VI, um, wait, yeah, sixth. No, 11th, actually. My bad. Because this is 10th, I believe. During the Black Death was really onto something, and they suggested that he surrounded himself with flaming torches to keep the disease at bay. Now, today it is understandable that heat kills bacteria, and Pope Clement did not catch the plague, but he did not stay in quarantine either. Instead, he went out, he cared for the sick, in his native Avignon, and yet he never became sick himself. A man ahead of his time, Pope Clement issued two papal bulls condemning the violence and had broken out against the Jews who had Christians blamed for the Black Death. Using common sense, Pope Clement pointed out that Jews could not be responsible for many Jewish people that had contracted the plague, and he offered the Jewish people in his community sanctuary at his court in order to members. Luckily for modern day patients with bubonic plague, can be effectively treated and noticed in the West and taken for granted. Taken that the West is taken for granted. But I also now this is the sad part right here. I'm gonna say this. While it is funny to talk about like some of the cures, this isn't funny right here to talk about. And this is the part that during the Black Death in the mid 14th century, Jews were widely considered and falsely blamed for the plague. Now, what was the reasons? Well, the lack of medical knowledge, scapegoating and pre-existing anti-Semitism, well poisoning conspiracies, um, perceived lower death rates, economic factors, and tortured their confessions. Now, what were the consequences? Well, the accusations led to a wave of brutal Jewish pogroms and the destruction of hundreds of Jewish communities across the German states, France, Spain, and between 1348 to 1351, in cities like Mainz and Strasbourg. Um, but I also want to talk about these facts I found out real quick. And these are just some 10 random facts, guys. And that is the first one is although the period known as the Black Death ended in 1351, the plague continued to return to Europe with the epidemics every few years throughout the end of the 15th century. The first fact number two, the first named victims of the plague died in 1338 and 1339 in the area known as Lake Baikal in Russia, where a grave marker says, "In the year of the hare." This is the grave of Cutlock. He died of the plague with his wife Magnukelka. Also, another fact is when people find out that they are dying, they experience what is known as an existential slap, according to palliative care experts. But in that moment, it's the moment when a person knows on a gut level this death is close. Um, fact number four. From Sicily, the Black Death took 3 years to sweep through Europe. Moving north, um, and traveling as far as Iceland and Greenland, the plague has simultaneously um, climate change is put at the end of the European colonies. Now, since the 1980s, several researchers have blamed other diseases, including anthrax and typhus from the disease. And the argument claims that other diseases spread more easily between people without require flea vector as well. But let's talk about the plague doctors. Well, the plague doctors were 17th century European physicians, okay? And they were hired by the cities to treat the bubonic plague victims regardless of their income. And they wore these distinctive ankle length coat, wide brimmed hat, gloves, boots, and breaked out mask um, as well. Now, um, their duties were treating the sick, recording deaths and infections, and witnessing wills and performing autopsies. Now, like in their nose, they had those masks. You know the beaks, right? They were stuffed with strong smelling herbs. Okay? Now, let's briefly talk about some of the areas that was safe from the Black Death. And that was Poland and Bohemia. And these regions were largely unaffected, possibly due to their distance from the major, highly trafficked trade routes and potentially different rat population. Milan, where the city implemented strict quarantine measures. Navarre, the area of the border of France, seemed to have limited access. Burgess, where the cities in the Low Countries were relatively protected, as seen on the map of the Black Death spread. And a lot of it also has to do with history, because you got to remember at this time there's the Silk Trade also happening, and everything. So let's keep that in mind as well. But yeah, there we go. But you just keep that in mind as well. But it's crazy though, because me and Bethany were talking, like, not to get all morbid, because we were talking like, could we survive the Black Death? Honestly, we probably would. We were both C-section babies. So given the mortality rate at that time, yeah. Not to go morbid about it, but thinking I am a morbid person. Isn't that why y'all love me? But yeah. But that is it for this episode. You can join me next time as we talk about supernatural fiction. I am so excited. I do have a bunch of episodes set to be coming out at the time of this recording, and I hate that I did not get the guest on here today because of my stupid screw up. I will turn the mic on next time. I promise, guys. I promise. I promise. And I did not catch it. I was doing a screen recording because my Zoom was acting up. But yeah. But the next topic I do have plan on having guests on for is going to be when I talk about the werewolf witch trials. And that's gonna be fun. But that's it for today. Y'all have a happy Thanksgiving. And War Eagle.